The soft morning light filtered through the kitchen windows of Grace and Oscar's home, illuminating the cozy space that had always been their sanctuary. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the scent of toast browning on the skillet. Grace, with her experienced hands, flipped the bread, while Oscar, having already taken care of grinding the coffee beans, watched her with the kind of affection that only years of companionship could nurture. "Did you remember to add sugar to the coffee?" Oscar asked with a playful grin. He knew Grace preferred it without sugar, but he loved teasing her every now and then. "Of course not. You know I don't like it," Grace replied with a laugh. "But if you want, I can prepare a sugar pot for you, maybe in the next decade." Oscar chuckled, a deep, infectious sound. The couple had built a life together, full of memories, and this simple yet meaningful moment was proof of that. They talked about their day's routine, dinner plans, and the upcoming visit to their granddaughter, who lived miles away. Grace felt a tinge of longing as she thought of little Clara, with her mischievous nature and radiant smile. "I'd love to see her again," Grace said as she placed the toast on a plate. "I think we should plan a visit. It's time I met her new friend, Sophia." "You're right, dear. How about we call your daughter later?" "We can arrange something for next month," Oscar suggested, placing a hand on the table as if trying to map out a plan with sheer willpower. "That would be wonderful. It's been so long since I've seen her," Grace said, her eyes sparkling with excitement at the thought. "But I'll need some time to prepare. I'm not quite the same as I used to be, you know." "You're as beautiful as you've always been," Oscar responded sincerely. He got up and wrapped her in a warm embrace. "Just remember, no matter the distance, we'll always be together on this journey." The conversation flowed naturally as they sipped their coffee and shared smiles. Yet, as the day wore on, Grace began to feel a slight unease, a sensation she couldn't quite put her finger on. She tried to brush it off, but the restlessness inside her only seemed to grow. Later, after breakfast, Grace decided that a walk in the park would be a good idea. The day was beautiful, and the fresh breeze beckoned her outside. Oscar, always attentive, offered to accompany her, but Grace, determined to have a moment of quiet reflection, insisted that he stay home and enjoy his newspaper. "I'm just going for a little walk, love. I need some fresh air," Grace said, adjusting the scarf around her neck. "I promise I won't be long." "All right then, just make sure to be back before lunch," Oscar replied with a wink. "And if you need me, just call." Grace smiled and stepped out of the house, feeling the lightness of the air around her. The park was full of life. Children playing, couples strolling, and elderly folks, like her, basking in the sunlight. She walked slowly, savoring each step, but the strange feeling still lingered, like a shadow that wouldn't leave her alone. After some time, Grace decided it was time to head back. Passing by a pharmacy, an idea crossed her mind. Why not take a pregnancy test, she thought, laughing at herself for even considering such an absurd notion. It had been years since she'd worried about that, and the idea seemed as ridiculous as it was unlikely. Yet, curiosity and the lingering unease drove her to step inside. Once inside, Grace felt a bit embarrassed, but she didn't let that stop her. With a quick glance around, she picked up a test, paid for it, and returned home. As soon as she entered, her heart raced in her chest. With a mix of anxiety and excitement, she headed straight for the bathroom. The wait for the results felt agonizing. She glanced at the clock, counting the seconds, and when she finally looked at the test, what she saw left her frozen. It couldn't be. Faint pink line. Was it a sign that she was pregnant? It was a miracle, but at the same time a whirlwind of emotions hit her. Fear and joy intertwined in her mind. "No, this can't be true," Grace whispered to herself, holding the test as if it were a fragile object. "I need more time to think about this." She decided to keep the secret for now. Telling Oscar felt like a daunting task. How would he react? The idea of a pregnancy at such a late stage in life, even if it was a miracle, might be too much for him. Grace took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. The day passed slowly as she tried to act normally, preparing dinner and watching television, but anxiety consumed her. When night finally came, Grace found herself watching Oscar as he slept on the couch. He looked so peaceful, so content. Her love for him was immense, but the fear of his reaction held her back from sharing the news. What if he didn't want this? What if it became a burden instead of a blessing? The questions multiplied in her mind. "I can't do this to him," Grace murmured to herself, gently stroking Oscar's graying hair. "Maybe I can wait a little longer." She stood up, grabbed a blanket and draped it over Oscar, admiring him for a moment. The life they had built together was full of love and understanding, and Grace knew that no matter what happened, they would always be together. But what would she do with this new information? How could she bear this weight alone for much longer? The night wore on, and Grace lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Doubts and fears followed her like persistent shadows. The miracle that should have brought joy and hope now weighed heavily on her heart. As she stared at the ceiling, Grace promised herself that by morning she would make a decision. Whatever came, she would face it with courage, for she knew she had never been alone on this journey. And so, with a restless mind and a racing heart, Grace awaited the new day, hoping that the morning light would bring answers and clarity for the future that lay ahead. Grace awoke to the sun filtering through the bedroom window, gently illuminating the room. The smell of fresh coffee filled her nostrils, and for a brief moment she lost herself in the tranquility of the morning. But then reality hit her like a cold splash of water. The pregnancy, the thought that she was about to become a mother again at 70 years old, was absolutely surreal. She sat on the edge of the bed, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Her heart raced as the memory of the pregnancy test and the sensation of dread overwhelmed her. After a moment of hesitation, Grace stood up and prepared herself to face Oscar. He had always been her unwavering support, and now, more than ever, she needed to share the news that would change their lives forever. With firm but nervous steps, she walked toward the kitchen. Oscar was there, standing by the counter, stirring the coffee while whistling a soft tune. When he saw her, he smiled. "Good morning, my love," he said, turning to Grace. "You look thoughtful. Is everything okay?" Grace hesitated. The words she was about to speak felt heavy. She took a deep breath and said, "Oscar, we need to talk." He paused, the expression on his face shifting from light-heartedness to concern. "What happened? You're making me nervous." Grace sat down at the table, her hands trembling slightly. She looked into Oscar's eyes, searching for the courage to speak. I took a pregnancy test yesterday." Oscar furrowed his brow in confusion. "What?" "That's not possible. You went through menopause, didn't you?" I know," Grace interrupted, her voice shaky, but the test came back positive. A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Oscar stood still, his gaze fixed on Grace as if trying to process the information. His expression shifted rapidly, from shock to a mix of disbelief and, slowly, a hesitant smile. "So, you're saying we're going to have a baby?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Grace nodded, emotion welling up inside her. "Yes, but it's complicated. The doctor said it's a high-risk pregnancy." "High risk?" Oscar repeated, his expression now more serious. He moved closer, taking Grace's hands in his own, holding them firmly. "What does that mean?" "It means we need to be cautious. I don't know how my body will handle this, Oscar. It's also unexpected," Grace said, her voice a mix of uncertainty and fear. Oscar took a deep breath, his expression resolute as he looked into her eyes. "We'll face this together, my love. We've been through everything together. This is just another adventure, isn't it?" She smiled, feeling a bit lighter. "Always together, right? Always. Now, let's go see the doctor. We need more information, and most importantly, we need to know how to take care of you and this little life that's coming." Grace nodded, her heart pounding. The idea of a new beginning, a new life entering their world, was both thrilling and terrifying. But with Oscar by her side, she felt like she could face anything. At the doctor's office, they were greeted with a warm smile. The doctor led them into a room where Grace sat in the chair, while Oscar stood beside her, holding her hand. The doctor began explaining the situation. "Grace, your pregnancy is indeed unusual, but it's not impossible. We will need to monitor you very closely. Have you experienced any symptoms or discomfort?" "Just a bit of nausea," she replied, looking into the doctor's eyes. "What else should we expect?" The doctor paused, studying Grace carefully. "It's important that you maintain a healthy diet and avoid stress. We'll schedule regular checkups to make sure everything is progressing well." Oscar leaned in, concerned. "And what about the risks? What can we do to help Grace?" "The most important thing right now is to take care of her," the doctor responded. "And if you notice any concerning symptoms, you must contact us immediately." Grace felt a lump in her throat. The fear and anxiety were ever present, but Oscar's unwavering support gave her strength. He'd always been her rock, and now, more than ever, she needed him. "We'll do whatever it takes," Oscar said, looking at Grace with deep affection. "We're in this together." After their visit to the doctor, the reality of the pregnancy began to settle into their lives. Upon returning home, Grace began receiving messages from friends and neighbors, all expressing their joy over the news. It wasn't long before the community rallied around them. A group of neighbors gathered in a nearby apartment to discuss how they could help Grace and Oscar during this challenging time. "I can't believe Grace is pregnant," exclaimed Donna Rita, one of their closest neighbors. "We need to do something to support them." "Yes. How about organizing a fundraiser? They'll need help with expenses and everything that comes with a baby, especially in a situation like this," suggested Jorge, a longtime friend of the couple. The idea was met with enthusiasm, and within days, the community had united in support of Grace and Oscar. Messages of love and encouragement began pouring into the couple's home. That afternoon, while Grace was tidying up the house, the phone rang. It was one of the neighbors, Anna. "Hi, Grace. How are you feeling?" Grace smiled at the sound of her voice. "Hi, Anna. I'm a little nervous, but trying to stay positive. We're organizing a small fundraiser of supplies and donations for you. We all want to help in any way we can." Grace's heart filled with gratitude. "That's so kind of all of you. I don't even know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank us. We're all here for you and Oscar. We'll get through this together." Grace hung up the phone and looked out the window, watching the children playing in the park. Life around her seemed so vibrant and full of possibilities. Though the future felt uncertain, she knew that with Oscar and the community's support, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. "Grace!" Oscar called from the other room. "Come here, quick!" She hurried into the living room, worried. "What happened?" Oscar stood in front of the television, pointing at the screen. "Look at this. The community is coming together to help us. They're organizing an event." Grace stepped closer and saw images of friends and neighbors gathering, planning what looked like a celebration in support of the pregnancy. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized they were not alone in this journey. "They really care about us, don't they?" Grace said, her voice filled with emotion. "Of course they do, my love. This just shows that no matter the difficulties, we'll always have love and support around us." Grace smiled, feeling a wave of hope wash over her. She knew that their journey was just beginning, but with Oscar by her side and the community's love, they were ready to face whatever came their way. The miracle that was about to unfold in their lives was a reminder that it's never too late for new beginnings. Grace sat down in one of the chairs in the living room, watching the sunlight streaming through the window. The warm rays seemed to embrace her, but the anxiety still weighed heavily on her heart. Since discovering she was pregnant, her life had changed in unimaginable ways. The support from the community and Oscar's love gave her strength, but the uncertainties continued to haunt her. To ease her mind, she decided to join a support group that met at the local library. It was an opportunity to meet other mothers and share experiences. On the day of the meeting, Grace wore a light, comfortable dress, feeling a bit more confident. Upon arrival, she found a diverse group of women, all brought together by a common cause. There were young mothers, older mothers, and even a few expecting twins. The room was filled with smiles and laughter, and Grace felt welcomed immediately. "Hi, my name is Grace," she introduced herself with a shy smile. "I'm pregnant at 70. "Wow, you're such an inspiration," said a woman with short grey hair, who introduced herself as Laura. "I'm a mum to a 2-year-old, and I know how challenging the journey can be." "Thank you, Laura. I'm a bit terrified, to be honest," Grace confessed, sitting down next to her. "I never imagined I'd be going through this again." "It's normal to feel that way," said another woman named Fernanda, who was 6 months pregnant. "I was scared when I found out I was expecting 2. Life is full of surprises." The women began sharing their personal stories, and Grace felt more at ease with each passing minute. They spoke about their fears, joys, and hopes. The conversation flowed naturally, and for a moment, Grace forgot all her worries. "How's your husband handling all of this?" Laura asked, curious. Grace smiled at the thought of Oscar. "He's more excited than I expected. He's always wanted to be a father again, even after all these years." "That's amazing. His support will make all the difference," Fernanda added. "Having a partner by your side is crucial." After the meeting, Grace felt rejuvenated. The women had inspired her to see the situation in a new light. When she returned home, she found Oscar in the kitchen preparing dinner. The aroma of fresh herbs and garlic filled the air, and the love she felt for him overflowed. "How was your day, dear?" Oscar asked, his warm smile lighting up the room. "It was wonderful. I met some incredible mothers. They helped me realize that I'm not alone on this journey," Grace replied, sitting down at the table. "And you? How was your day?" "I spent the afternoon organizing a few things for the baby." "I thought we could start getting the nursery ready," Oscar said, the excitement clear in his voice. Grace frowned, her worries resurfacing. "Oscar, you know this pregnancy is high risk, right? We can't get ahead of ourselves. What if something goes wrong?" Oscar paused for a moment, locking eyes with her. "I understand your concerns, Grace, but we have to stay optimistic. What we're doing is simply preparing for a new life, and I'll be by your side every step of the way." She sighed, trying to balance her hope with her fear. "You always know how to calm me down. Let's prepare the nursery then." In the days that followed, Oscar devoted himself to transforming one of the rooms in their house into a cozy space for the baby. He picked soft, lovely colors, painting the walls a light shade of blue. Grace, watching him work, couldn't help but feel emotional. Seeing Oscar so excited filled her with both joy and worry. One afternoon, as Oscar was assembling a crib, Grace approached him. "You're so excited, love, and I'm happy to see it, but what if I can't handle it? What if something happens?" Oscar stopped and looked at Grace, his eyes full of understanding. "Grace, we're doing this together. You are strong and resilient. I believe in you, and if something happens, we'll face it together." She nodded, feeling his words sink into her heart. Still, the uneasiness lingered. The fear of the unknown followed her like a persistent shadow. That night, as they lay in bed, Grace turned to Oscar and said, "I just want everything to be okay, for us to have a healthy baby." "I want that too, Grace. But the most important thing is that we're together. No matter what happens, we'll always have each other," Oscar assured her, wrapping his arms around her. The following week, it was time for their doctor's appointment. Grace was nervous. The uncertainties about her health and the baby's development made her restless. As she entered the clinic, her heart began to race. Dr. Ribeiro, a kind man with a gentle smile, always managed to put her at ease. "Hello, Grace. How are you feeling?" he asked as he reviewed her medical history. "I'm doing okay, I think. Just a bit anxious," Grace replied, glancing at Oscar, who was holding her hand tightly. "That's perfectly normal," Dr. Ribeiro said, looking at her with empathy. "Today, we'll do an ultrasound and see how the baby is developing." Grace nodded, feeling a mix of emotion and fear. During the exam, her eyes were fixed on the screen, her heart pounding as she saw the tiny being forming inside her. It was a magical moment, yet the worry still gnawed at her. "Everything looks good, Grace. The baby is healthy and developing normally," Dr. Ribeiro announced, and a relieved smile spread across Grace's face. "Thank you, Doctor," she murmured, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. "I was so worried. It's natural to feel that way, but you're doing everything right. Just remember to take care of yourself during this journey," he advised her. Grace looked over at Oscar, who was beaming at her with pride in his eyes. "We're in this together, aren't we?" she whispered. "Forever, my love," he replied, squeezing her hand even tighter. As Grace sat in the doctor's office, a whirlwind of emotions swept through her. The small miracle growing inside her was healthy, and she had found new strength. Worries still lingered, but as she looked at Oscar, she knew they could face anything together. The love and support from their community also fortified her, and Grace realized that no matter the highs and lows, she wasn't alone. With her heart full of hope, she decided to face each day with the courage that had always been within her. After all, the miracle had only just begun. Outside, the sky was blanketed in grey clouds, and a light rain began to fall as Grace sat on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket. The sound of raindrops tapping against the windows created a soft melody, but inside, she felt like she was in a storm of emotions. The pregnancy, which had initially brought a mix of joy and expectation, now filled her with anxiety and uncertainty. The sensation that something was wrong followed her, like a shadow she couldn't shake. Oscar walked into the room, his face full of concern as he noticed Grace's expression. "Are you okay, love?" he asked, kneeling beside her to meet her eyes. "You seem distant." Grace forced a smile, but the worry was clear in her eyes. "Just a little tired, love. The rain always makes me feel like this." Oscar sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "You know you can tell me anything, right? I'm here, always." He studied her face, sensing that there was something deeper troubling her. "You're scared, aren't you?" The question broke the silence, and Grace felt a wave of emotion wash over her. "Yes, I am," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Everything is so unexpected. I don't know if I'm ready to be a mother again, especially with all the risks. What if something happens to the baby?" Oscar squeezed her hand, trying to give her the reassurance she needed. "Look, I'm scared too, but we can't let that fear control us. We're in this together, and together we'll face anything that comes our way." He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Remember, we have the community behind us. They're ready to help. We're not alone." Grace looked into Oscar's eyes, seeking comfort in his steady gaze. "I know, but it's also new and frightening. Sometimes the idea of becoming a mother again makes me feel like I'm walking a tightrope." "You've been an amazing mother before," he reminded her with a soft smile. "And now you have the chance to be even better. With the love we share and the strength you have, I know you can do this." Oscar's words calmed the storm inside her heart. She leaned against him, feeling the warmth and security she always found in his embrace. "Thank you, love. I really need you by my side." The rain continued to fall outside, but inside their home, a new sense of hope began to bloom. That night, Grace slept fitfully, her dreams filled with confusing and distressing images. But at one point, everything changed. She found herself in a bright place, surrounded by colorful flowers. The air was sweet, and she felt an indescribable peace. In front of her stood a child, smiling with golden hair and bright eyes. It was a baby, yet somehow more than that, an extension of her love, a symbol of all that she and Oscar had built together. "Hi, Mommy," the child said with a soft and melodious voice. "I'm here for you." Grace's heart warmed. "Are you really here? Are you real?" "Yes, I'm real, and I'm waiting for you. Don't be afraid, Mommy. You are strong and brave. Love me, and I will always be with you." The child reached out, as if to touch her, and in that moment Grace felt all her fears begin to melt away. "I will love you, always," Grace whispered, tears of emotion welling up in her eyes. The dream intensified, and she began to see flashes of happy moments, laughter, hugs, the warmth of a united family. The vision of love and joy enveloped her, and when she woke up the next morning, she felt a new sense of purpose. When Oscar entered the kitchen, he found her standing, preparing breakfast with a radiant smile on her face. "Good morning, my love. You won't believe the dream I had." Oscar smiled, noticing the change in her energy. "Good morning. I love when you wake up like this. What happened in your dream?" She spoke excitedly. "I dreamed of the baby. It was a beautiful child, and they told me I needed to be strong, that everything would be okay. I felt like it was a special message, as if he or she was telling me not to be afraid." Oscar watched her with admiration. "That's amazing, Grace. I've always believed that dreams can guide us. This baby is already inspiring you." Grace nodded, feeling a wave of determination. "Yes, I've decided I'm not going to let fear control me. Every day is a gift, and I want to savor every moment of this journey." Breakfast was prepared in a light-hearted atmosphere, filled with laughter and talks of the future. Grace and Oscar were more connected than ever, and the positive energy between them was palpable. Later, the doorbell rang, and when Grace opened the door, she was met with a surprise. Their neighbors stood there, holding plates of food, balloons, and smiles on their faces. "Surprise!" they shouted in unison. Grace was stunned, but her heart filled with joy. "What's going on?" "We're here to celebrate you and your pregnancy," Maria, one of their closest neighbors, exclaimed. "We want you to know we're all in this together. You're not alone." A tear slipped down Grace's cheek. "This is so beautiful. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just accept our love," João, another neighbor, replied, as everyone began setting things on the table. "We've organized a surprise party in your honor. You deserve this." Oscar took Grace's hand and squeezed it, smiling. "See, the community is here to support us. Let's enjoy this, love." And so, their home filled with laughter, music, and the delicious smell of homemade food. Friends and neighbors shared stories, brought gifts, and offered words of encouragement. The energy was contagious, and Grace, surrounded by so much love, realized her journey would never be lonely. In the middle of the celebration, Grace felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She looked around, seeing happy faces and loving eyes full of solidarity. It was a miracle she hadn't expected, but it came in the form of support and friendship. "Thank you all so much," Grace said, her voice choked with emotion as she raised a glass of juice, "for being here and for all the love. I feel so supported and loved, and it gives me the strength to face this new chapter of my life." Everyone raised their glasses in a toast, and the celebration continued, filled with hope and love, just like the life Grace carried inside her. She knew that despite the challenges ahead, she was surrounded by people who loved her and would always stand by her. Life, with its surprises, was more beautiful than ever. Grace was in shock, her gaze lost as she tried to process what the doctor had just said. "Experimental treatment? No, I never knew anything about this," she responded, her voice trembling. "How is that possible? I never sought out any treatment." Oscar moved even closer to the bed, gripping Grace's hand tightly. "Is this some kind of mistake, Doctor? How could something like this happen without her knowledge?" The doctor, now with a more serious expression, attempted to explain. "It seems there was a breakdown in communication somewhere in your medical history. The treatment you received was part of an experimental program designed to help women conceive after menopause. It's extremely rare, and you were one of the few patients where the procedure was successfully carried out." The shock and confusion only deepened. Grace felt a lump form in her throat, her body beginning to tremble slightly. "So, the baby, it only exists because of this treatment?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, Grace. The good news is that both you and the baby are healthy, but this pregnancy will require even closer monitoring due to the risks associated with your health condition and the nature of the treatment." Oscar, always the pillar of strength, looked at Grace, seeing the weight of the new information resting on her shoulders. "Grace," he said, his voice firm but full of love, "this doesn't change the fact that this baby is a miracle for us. No matter how it happened, we're here now, together." Grace took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. The revelation had shaken her deeply, but as she looked at Oscar and thought about the tiny life growing inside her, she knew this was just another challenge they had to face. "You're right," she whispered, squeezing his hand. "It doesn't matter how we got here. This baby is a part of us, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure everything turns out fine." The doctor smiled gently. "With your determination, Grace, and Oscar's support, I'm confident the two of you will get through this. We'll continue to closely monitor your pregnancy and do everything necessary to keep both you and the baby healthy." After the doctor left the room, Grace and Oscar sat in silence for a moment. The weight of the discovery still hung in the air, but something stronger was present now, the determination to move forward. Oscar sat beside Grace, wrapping his arm around her. "No matter how or why," he said softly, "what matters now is that we're in this together, like always." Grace leaned into him, feeling the strength of the love they shared. "Yes," she agreed, "we'll face this together." Grace shook her head, a mixture of confusion and disbelief washing over her. I didn't know about any of this. I thought I was just being monitored for my health. How did this happen?" Oscar held Grace's hand, wrapping it gently in his. "We're in this together, don't worry. We'll figure it all out, okay?" He was trying to stay calm, but his mind was racing. "If it's an experimental treatment, that means there are risks, right?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, there are risks, but the good news is that the pregnancy is progressing well so far. We'll need to monitor Grace closely and make sure she follows all medical recommendations. It's crucial that she maintains a healthy diet, avoids stress, and attends all necessary appointments." Grace looked at Oscar, who was still holding her hand tightly. "I don't know what to think, Oscar. This is a miracle, but it's also terrifying. I'm not sure I'm ready for a high-risk pregnancy, especially now that I know I wasn't informed about the treatment." "My love," Oscar said, looking into her eyes tenderly, "no matter how this happened, it's something we both wanted, even without knowing. Now that we do know, we'll prepare for it. We'll be careful and focus on what truly matters, our baby." Grace felt a wave of gratitude toward Oscar. He always knew how to find the right words to comfort her. "You're right. We can't let fear stop us. We'll face this together." With their decision made, Grace and Oscar felt more determined. The doctor left, promising to return soon to discuss the care plan and next steps. As the door closed, Oscar turned to Grace and took a deep breath. "Are you ready to face this?" "Yes, I am," Grace replied, feeling a newfound strength within her. "If life gave us this opportunity, we have to grab it with everything we've got." As they spoke, the Riverwood community, which had always stood by the couple, began to rally around them once again. Neighbors gathered, organizing a fundraiser to help Grace and Oscar with medical expenses and preparations for the baby's arrival. The positive energy surrounding them was palpable, and Grace felt more supported than ever before. "Look, Oscar," Grace said, glancing out the hospital room window. "Look at how people are coming together for us. It's amazing. I never imagined we'd receive so much support." "This is what life is, Grace. It's about the people we love and who love us. And we've got a miracle on the way. That's reason enough to celebrate," Oscar said, smiling. "Let's make a list of what we need for the baby. The community will help us with that, and we'll make sure everything is ready to welcome them." "You're right. Let's focus on what we can do," Grace said, feeling reinvigorated. She began mentally listing essentials: baby clothes, a crib, and even a stroller. The future now seemed clearer, and the anxiety started to fade. As the days passed, Grace and Oscar became an even stronger team. Each doctor's appointment was a new opportunity to learn and prepare. The doctors were clear about the necessary precautions, and Grace's dedication to her health became a top priority. When they finally returned home, the atmosphere was filled with joy and anticipation. The walls were decorated with messages of support from the community, and the flowers they had received as gifts filled the air with a sweet, welcoming fragrance.
"Look at this, Oscar," Grace exclaimed, gazing around. "I never imagined so many people cared about us like this. And this is just the beginning, my love."
"We're going to do everything we can to make this place special for our baby," Oscar replied, wrapping his arms around her. "Let's celebrate every little moment of this journey." Grace smiled, feeling a wave of hope and love. They were ready to face whatever came their way, together, with hearts full of gratitude and the excitement of a bright future ahead. Life, as always, had its challenges, but with love and support, they were ready to turn them into miracles. I hope this story touched your heart, just as it touched ours. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to Radio Life Stories so you don't miss any of our upcoming emotional stories. And of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below, share what you think, and let's keep this conversation going. See you next time, and remember, every story has the power to transform.